Now you take 15% off the top from the non-resident quota? Holy cow.
Putting wolves into Colorado by December 31st of 2023.
You might want to double check the regs and just see if that unit is now a high demand with that little plus sign next to the hunt code.
Welcome to the Built to Hunt podcast, brought to you by the team of hunt advisors at the Huntin Fool magazine, where we are dedicated to helping our members go on more hunts with better information. Join Huntin Fool today at huntinfool.com.
Welcome to another Built to Hunt podcast. I'm Garth Jenson. I'm joined here today by Logan Hedges. He's coming to you live, maybe not live, recorded, and in Smoot, Wyoming. Logan, how's it going?
It's going good. It's just wintertime up here. We got a lot of snow.
Yeah, it's funny because we get a ton of. We're getting way more snow down here in southern Utah than we're used to. But you know, in comparison, like you guys had this amount of snow in November.
Yeah. Yep. It's one of those years. It reminds me of when I was a kid. We got winter again. Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. Well, today on this podcast, we're going to be talking about Colorado. Colorado had some changes this year. They did some things that is going to affect the draw this year, but you know they're in the process of kind of having discussions on things that could change future years. We won't spend too much time on those future changes, although we will probably touch on them a little bit, just give you some hypotheticals. But realistically, what we want to do on this podcast is we want to just touch base on like some of the deadlines, some of the new changes that have happened, give you kind of an idea for people that haven't been applying in Colorado that just kind of want to know the ins and outs, some of the nuances. We'll try to touch on them, as well as give everyone that has been, applying in Colorado, try to touch on some of the changes that are put in place this year, some upcoming things, new hunts maybe, as well as just kind of give you a brief overview of how that might impact, your selections on your hunt choices this year. So I guess to start it off, we'll just kind of give you I'll run down through some deadlines, and basically the application deadline this year for Colorado is March 1st, and that's for, all species. And that's for points as well. Like you have to get in, there's not a points only period. You have to have your application in by April 4th. The draw results will be posted May 30th for that. And Colorado's a little different in that when they post that draw results, once you know about it, if for some reason your credit card on file doesn't go through, they give you kind of a grace period to be able to pay for that. And you'll notice that in the email that they send you. A lot of times it'll be kind of a red thing that'll say attention needed. And basically what that means is you have to go in and pay for that. And your payment deadline for that primary draw is June 16th. So it's a little bit nicer than Arizona. Like Arizona, they just say, tough luck, suck it. Your credit card got declined for whatever reason. We're moving on to the next applicant. At least Colorado, they give you a little bit of time frame to sure up on that. So after that primary draw, they do have a secondary draw for all the tags that are still remaining after that primary draw. And as of a couple years ago, which is kind of nice, anybody that turns their tag back in, that they drew and turn their tag back in, I think it's anything that's 5 points and under for a resident to draw, they will turn around and kick that back into the secondary draw, which is available for everyone to apply for.
Yep.
But they put that back into the secondary draw, so sometimes you can get some pretty dang sweet tags in that secondary draw.
Yeah, without burning your points.
Yeah, it doesn't take anything, so you're not out nothing.
Yep.
That deadline this year is going to be July 21st. Or no, excuse me, is June 30th. The payment deadline is July 21st.
Yep.
So June 30th, you got to have your application in. That will open on June 21st. So the one thing about the secondary draw I can tell you is all of those tags, they have a preference towards youth. So any tag that's on there, if there's 5 tags available and 6 youth apply for it, all of them are gone.
Yep.
I don't care if there's 200 adults that apply for it. All of them are going to be drawn by those youth. So if you have kids, like me and Logan do, put them in for that secondary draw. My daughter got a four-season deer tag last year off of it.
You bet. No.
So that's the secondary draw. And one thing to make note of, and this is one kind of a tidbit that maybe a lot of people don't know that's out there, but as of a couple years ago, Colorado, they have a tag a return policy. Whereas the standard policy, everyone knows as you have to turn it back in 30 days prior to the start of the season, and you have to choose between getting your points reinstated to a pre-draw level, meaning you won't gain a point for that year, or you can select a refund. And it's an either-or deal. But as of a couple years ago, what they did is they instituted a window of time immediately following the results that come out on the primary and the secondary draw, where you can turn around and basically just reverse that. They never actually issue you the tag because you take care of this before the payment deadline, but you reverse that, and there's a process you go through in contacting or emailing the Division of Wildlife, telling them that you don't wish to accept the tag. Then what happens, they will actually turn around and give you a refund and reinstate your points to a pre-draw level, which a lot of people don't know about. But it's a small window that takes place, and basically I think June 5th is the deadline for the primary draw applicants to do that, and July 10th is the deadline for the secondary draw applicants to return those tags.
Yeah. No. Yeah, it's great. I love that. Just in case you end up drawing and you've drawn 2 or 3 other tags and you're just not going to be able to go on all of them. The second you know you've drawn it, you can just turn around and turn it back in, and you're not out anything other than you don't get to gain a point for that year.
Well, I'll tell you this: if they would have had that, it's been 4 years now. Well, 3 or 4 years ago, when me and my wife both drew a cow moose tag over there.
Yeah.
Like, I just basically requested the refund because I'm like, well, I only had 1 point. I wasn't too concerned with that, but I wasn't about to get that 1 point and sacrifice $2,000 for that 1 point. Yeah. But if I would have had that, I would have already been able to draw another cow moose tag, and now I'm just chasing.
Yep.
So that's a pretty cool thing they offer to people right now in Colorado that most don't know about. Colorado, as far as upfront fees, they do require some upfront fees in order to apply in either the primary or that secondary draw. Basically, you have to buy a qualifying license, which this year the annual small games is $93.78. You also have to buy a habitat stamp, which is $11.50. And then each of your application fees are $10 a piece. That's up from last year. All of those fees are up a little bit from last year. Colorado has a cycle where they add a certain percentage, to each tag or each of their fees every year. Except like the point fee for sheep, moose, and goat, that stayed at $100. So if you elect to buy that point, that's going to cost you $100. But those are some fees that are required up front in order to participate in the draw. So as far as that, I would call it housekeeping. Would you call that housekeeping?
Yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. Everything that you kind of need to know up front, anyways. Colorado, it's one of the states that you don't have to put your money up front. They will charge you if you draw.
Yep, for the tags.
Yep, for the tags. Yep.
So. Yeah, which is kind of nice. I mean, when they did that for sheep, moose, and goat, if the barrier of entry for you was financial, because back in the day there was 2 barriers of entry. You had to submit a written application, mail in a check, and that was directly out of your bank account. But since they turned around and made that online and no fees, boy, Pandora's box got open and it's made it available to most everybody.
Yes.
So I guess with with that behind us, why don't we jump into some of the changes this year? Logan, why don't you talk to us a little bit about like the rolling average change, which is quite possibly going to be the biggest change this year, or is probably going to impact the most non-residents.
Yeah, I mean that's a big change that they made this year. That 3-year average, the rolling average now, where it used to be, it was just a 3-year average from, I think it was 2007 through 2009. And if there was, if the resident points, if it required 6 points or more or over, then you had to, then it was going to be an 80-20 split instead of the 65-35. Yeah, so that average, that average, if it's 6 points or more, that's going to take away quite a few tags from those hunts.
Yeah,
it'll take 15% of the tags away for the non-residents.
And we really noticed that in units that were like right on the bubble. I mean, point creep is still affecting residents, but not near to the extent as non-residents. But we really noticed that in like units that residents were just kind of creeping up to, like 76 archery is going to be one, 76 first rifle is going to be another one. It used to be that before, realistically, the only deer hunts that were even on there were pretty much ranching for wildlife, which didn't matter at all to non-residents anyways, because you couldn't apply for them.
Yep.
But now, what I'm looking at is, gosh dang, there's 66s on there, 3rd and 4th season. I mean, there's a lot of 4th season hunts that are on there now that used to not be on there. And for 4th season, that's a big deal for non-residents because there's so few tags anyways for those 4th season deer hunts.
Yeah.
Now you take 15% off the top from the non-resident quota. Holy cow. There's going to be a lot of them that went from 5 tags to, 2 tags or 3 tags.
Yeah. Yep, you bet. Because that figures up to like, far as the non-resident percentage of the tags, that takes like 43% away of the tags we were getting. Yes, that's a big hit right there. Nearly half the tags, and that's just gonna help with point creep is all that's gonna do. So or a negative impact on point creep, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, and like a lot, we get questioned a lot about the hybrid draw, and they use the same average for the hybrid draw, a little bit different point bracket for that. I mean, it's 10 points basically.
Yep.
10 points or more are the units that qualify for that in the resident draw. That's going to update some of those hunts that are included in the hybrid draw, but it doesn't have the drastic effect of non-residents as this quota change as far as how they deem high demand, which you can find those high demand units in the regulations if you read down through them. Basically, there will be a little, not an asterisk, it's a little plus sign next to the hunt code when you're reading down through the regulations that will deem that a high demand, which kicks that 80-20% resident non-resident quota in. But the hybrid draw, the reason it doesn't have as much effect on non-residents is because they perform that hybrid draw after they already do the preference draw. So basically they pull out, I think it's 20% of the tags for that unit, and they'll set those aside for random applicants that applied for that hunt code with 5 points or more. But you have to have at least 5 points to be included in the hybrid draw. So they take that 20% out, but because 9 times out of 10 non-residents have more points than residents, they've already exhausted the non-resident quota before they get to the hybrid draw anyway. So by the time they get to the hybrid draw, even if they're pulling non-residents out of the hat or a non-resident application comes up, there's no quota left, so they just have to kick it out and move on to the next person until they fill them, which ends up getting filled by residents.
Yeah. Yep. Very, very seldom does it affect a non-resident there.
And realistically, the only time I'd ever see that happen is in antelope draw, and for twofold reason. I mean, the first reason being is that prior to this year, the antelope did not have a non-resident resident quota.
Yeah.
Like they were all in the same. There wasn't a quota there. Everyone was on equal footing, but they really didn't need one because residents had so many more points than non-residents when it came to antelope that realistically speaking, there was going to be the vast majority of applicants that applied were going to be residents with high points. So there was a lot of times when, resident or non-residents wouldn't even draw a tag, in some of these areas.
Yeah.
But they did, as part of that change, they did go in and put a quota on antelope this year. So the same quota exists now, the 65-35 for your standard and the 80-20%, quota split for the high demand areas, which, as I touched on, it's not going to really impact. You're probably still going to have a couple of those, hybrid draw permits go to non-residents, but that's just because there's so many residents out there with high point totals. They won't exhaust that, that non-resident quota in the preference draw.
It's going to affect a lot of people in the long run, and in the next few years here, we'll see that really start to affect points.
Yeah, for sure. And that's one thing to take note on is if you've been looking at a unit or a specific hunt, I should say, that you've been trying to draw, and it's taken a fair amount of non-resident points, when you're getting up there to that 18, 20, 21, 16, something like that, you might want to double check the regs and just see if that unit is now a high demand with that little plus sign next to the hunt code, because that could very well impact if you were on the bubble of drawing that. Say that hunt last year took 19 points and you have 20 points going into this year, 21. That 15% reduction in tags might kick you out. I mean, we don't know, how. I mean, we can't realistically say, but just maybe take a second and look at that, and just you might want to change your plans a little bit, or at least consider modifying your application if you want to for sure draw this year.
Yeah, you bet. Looking at the numbers, it's going to affect it. It's going to make it more difficult for sure.
Yeah. So, just to cover, we won't go over all the changes in Colorado. Like, they always do a few jostling back and forth for sheep hunts and goat hunts. I think a couple of the new hunts, like this year, they're going to have a rifle hunt in 𝗚44, which I don't think they've ever had a non-resident rifle tag available in 𝗚44. But I mean, that's a new one for non-residents this year. I think they added back in, I can't remember if it was, I think it's 𝗚49. I think they added back in for archery.
Yep.
And then they added goat hunt G114 for an archery, which is a pretty cool area. Like, that's a tag I would like to have. That is archery only. Prior to that, the only archery only hunt that non-residents had for goat was G5, which is still a great hunt. We still have it. But that was kind of nice to see that, G1 and 14 introduced. But just a couple things like that. A couple new deer hunts that they added this year that I'm kind of excited about.
Yeah.
They added some 4-season rifle deer hunts in 30, 31, and 32. I don't know how those are going to unfold, but I imagine that 34 season is going to be a tough one to get.
Yeah. It's going to be high demand for sure. That's going to be a good hunt.
Hey, the good thing is they don't have an average on that, so we're still getting 35% of the tags.
You bet. They don't have a 3-year average. So, yeah, for sure. So, but hopefully, I wish I had a few more points I'd put in for it. But
that's me too.
Yeah.
One thing to look at too, like if you have always been planning, like if you've been planning on doing an over-the-counter archery hunt on the Grand Mesa,
yep.
That's something you're going to have to reconsider this year and maybe apply for that hunt if you don't have a lot of points, or if you have 0 points, because as of this year, all those Grand Mesa units for archery elk are now in the draw. They're not available over the counter.
Yep, you bet. They got rid of that, and it's they've been doing a unit or two or a few units every year, and I think the trend's going to continue. With them eliminating OPC archery.
Yeah, and that's an area that, by all accounts, what their main concern was when they switched that into a draw is controlling hunter densities.
Yep.
It wasn't like some of these other units where they took and they converted that into a bull only. That's still going to be an either sex tag.
Yep.
You know, the recruitment, they weren't worried about recruitment and population so much. But hunter density and some of the feedback they got from a lot of resident hunters was that that hunt had definitely got overpopulated, and it was affecting, you know, a lot of the hunter satisfaction ratings that people were coming away from their way.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, you know, a lot of the meetings that I attended and biologists and even hunters that I talked to this year, everybody kind of singing the same song, and that's been a big influence on Colorado Parks and Wildlife. And I think we're going to see more changes in the future because of that.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. If people are out there, if they were planning on hunting that, if you're interested, you can go in the regulations, see how they broke that out.
Yep.
But basically, 411 and 52 is one unit. 521 is a hunt all of itself.
Yep.
And then 41, 42, and 421, basically the north side of that Grand Mesa, is a hunt in and of itself. So they broke that out into 3 separate hunts.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to make it good in the long run. It may not be great this year, but in the future, I think it's going to get better and better.
Yeah. No, I do too. I think it's going to make things considerably better. And, you know, to kind of take off on that, I mean, the one thing that, you know, just in watching some of those commission meetings, they're starting the process right now of developing the next 5-year season structure. And it's a long process.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a 6-month type deal where they say, okay, these are the season dates we're looking at. These are the changes we're looking to make. Let's run through a couple commission meetings and let's kick this out. This is like a 13-month process that they go through. So they're starting that now. And there's a lot of things on the table. Like they're discussing keeping the same type of a season structure they've had in place the last 5 years, or reverting back to the old season structure that they had prior to this, where some of those rifle hunts were a little bit earlier in the year than they are currently.
Yeah.
And part of that was actually they were going to discuss taking and limiting. I mean, there's a few different options they were talking about for archery elk, especially specifically OTC or over-the-counter general hunts, but they've kind of ramped that up, and they now are trying to discuss putting in some type of license restriction or tag restriction either to non-residents and residents, and turning all of that OTC archery into the draw and having specific quotas for those, or just limiting non-resident to a draw basis or a quota type.
Yep.
But they're talking about doing that for 2024, not 2025,
Yep.
which would be the start of the new 5-year season structure.
Yeah, and that's getting a lot of leeway too. It's you know, we talked about this a few months ago, and it's like, yeah, you know, they're talking about it a little bit, but boy, they're really starting to push it now, and it's getting more and more traction all the time.
Yeah, no, you watch those commission meetings, and throughout those commission meetings, I mean, there's not very many residents that aren't in favor of restricting non-resident hunting to a certain extent. And, you know, you look at the numbers, and quite frankly, even where the units where they turned into draws, like in the southern part of the state, 77, 78, 80, 81, you know, 71, 74, if you look at just the draw numbers, you're still getting over half or almost half of the actual people that apply and draw tags in those units for those archery tags are non-residents.
Non-residents, yep.
Which is, I mean, it's over and above the quota, but theoretically, after you start boiling it down, it's just because there's more non-residents applying in the draw for that than there are actually residents applying in the draw for those hunts.
Yeah. I don't know. The trend, I think the trend's going to continue, and yeah, we're going to see more and more. The non-resident, my prediction is the non-resident archery tags, OTC tags are a thing of the past. You know, from what I've seen and the meetings I've sat in on, and just talking to several biologists throughout the winter here, the non-resident OTC in Colorado is gone by probably next year. I thought it was going to be 25, but the way they're talking now, they're probably going to have it by next year. So.
Yeah. No, I agree, because it seems like every time they bring it up, there's more push
Yep.
to put some type of restriction on that over-the-counter archery hunt. I
Yep.
mean, to my knowledge, I haven't heard anything about them restricting the rifle, the over-the-counter rifle. But the archery is definitely something that they're, looking to push forward.
Yeah. Yep. No.
Well, let me just I'll run down some of those season dates really quick
Yeah.
here, so everyone kind of has an idea. So Colorado's archery season, as of the last season structure that they put in place, they kind of standardized it. It used to kind of move like the rest of these seasons did. Like they would kind of tick up or a day earlier every year. But they standardized it, and the archery season is September 2nd through the 30th, and so that never really changes anymore. The rest of these kind of rotate. Like the muzzleloader hunt will always kind of be on a rotating basis, and that's for deer and elk. That's the September 9th through the 17th. These are the ones that'll rotate a little bit, but some of those, most of the rifle deer hunts, or the early season rifle deer hunts, will be September 9th through the 17th. I know 74 has a September 2nd through the 10th, but I'm not sure if there's any others that have that same season date. I think most of them are the 9th to the 17th, but you kind of have to just look at the regs and see, because they have different early hunts. I mean, they have some early hunts that are high country hunts above a certain elevation. They have some that are limited to wilderness, and then they actually have a few that are unit wide.
Yeah.
So that's just something, just pay attention to that. And if you're looking at some of those early rifle hunts, it's a little less standardized. Early rifle elk is somewhat similar, although, I would say most of those northwest corner units have that October 1st through the 11th season. And then most of your early rifle hunts, like your 61, 76, those are going to be October 1st through the 7th.
Yeah.
And then you get into the first rifle elk season, which that's not a combined season. That's just elk.
Yeah.
But it's technically the first rifle season that's on that's on every unit, more or less. That season this year is October 14th through the 18th. Then you go to the second rifle, and that is a deer elk combo season. That's technically the first big season for deer. But that's October 28th through November 5th. The third season is November 11th through the 17th, and the fourth is November 22nd to the 26th. And Logan, you've hunted every one of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
At least second, third, fourth rifle season.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think the main difference is? And I'll just kind of, I'll say for deer in general, what's the biggest difference second, third, or fourth season when it comes to those deer hunts, in your opinion?
It varies from year to year. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the rut and the rut activity. But man, it's different every year. So depending on the weather, maybe a little bit of the moon phase, just different years, what the deer decide to do. I mean, I've had some hunts late October where the rut was great, second season. And then I've been in the third, and we didn't have any rut activity mid-November. So when you think it would be rocking and rolling, and the one thing about the fourth season, there's always some rut activity then. Whether it's great or just kind of subpar, there's always rut activity on that fourth season. And there's always a lot fewer tags. So that's always fun if you're hunting that fourth season. But it takes a lot of points or a lot of money to get those tags.
Yeah, meaning landowner tags can cost significantly more. Yeah. And you only have 5 days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely a shorter window to make it happen than, I think the second is 9 days and the third is 7.
Yep. And a lot of times some of those units are shot out a little bit. They've been picked through. We saw that this last year down there on the fourth season hunt, and man, we saw a lot of deer, but boy, it looked like grocery store during COVID. I mean, it'd been picked through. What was left on the shelves wasn't, were young deer and old mature deer that were 2x3s and 3x3s.
And realistically, I think that is something, one of the consequences that has happened since they made that shift and moved these season dates back a little more, because I used to hunt that third season before they made that season date shift, and I had hunted a fourth season up there with a friend of mine, and realistically, just they didn't go late enough to really pick through a lot of the mature bucks during the old third season dates, and so I think that's been one of the consequences of these later season dates, which I don't think the Game and Fish necessarily like they want that.
You bet. That was part of their plan. They wanted to kill mature bucks, and I think it's working. From what I've seen over the last few years, and especially 2022, I saw a significant decline in mature deer that we saw. Yeah. So deer numbers were still good. I can't complain about that, but quality wise, I would say they're, and maturity wise, they're definitely doing what they want to do.
That is something to take note on. Like if you have points and you're wanting to burn them this year, just take that into note a little bit. That, man, the fourth season is like Logan said, come hell or high water, you're going to have some rut activity.
Yep.
But if you have a pretty good rut during that third season before you get there, you might have some rutting activity, but it might not be by the bucks you were hoping to see.
Yep, you bet. And some weather, you get a good storm and get those deer pushed down, and yeah, they get killed. It's hard to kill a big buck if somebody's already got him in their barn or garage there. So
that's right. And since that second season has got pushed back, honestly, I think that second season is probably one of the more overlooked for the amount of points it takes to draw. If a guy wants to get in there, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not the best time to find an old mature buck, but I think that's an opportunist hunt at the end of the day. Because, I mean, I know you've hunted plenty of second seasons. I've hunted second seasons.
Yeah.
Braxton went second season hunting last year, and he took a hell of a nice buck.
Yeah.
And I think he took it the second day of the hunt, and it was actually with a group of does.
Yeah.
So, it's I think it's still a good hunt at the end of the day, and for the points required, I would probably rather have that second season than hold on to my points and try to get one of those really, great units for third or fourth, because that's going to take you tons of points.
Yeah, you bet. What's a great unit anymore too?
True.
If there's not trophy deer there anymore, I mean, they're getting killed as 4 and 5 year old bucks, second, third, and fourth season now. It's hard to, some of these units, especially they're issuing enough tags second and third season. Some of these places, these deer are getting killed. It's hard to kill something when they're not there.
Yeah, no, that's right. That's a good point.
Yeah, and another thing that when we're talking about drawing these tags and these second season tags and everything is, you need to look at the points, what it's taken to draw, because sometimes you can get a tag and go and hunt and you don't even have to burn your points. I've done that a time or two. I've drawn a second choice tag and your first choice, that's the only thing that burns points. So if you draw your first choice, it's going to take your points, whether you have 1 or 30. Your points are gone if you draw that tag. But if you draw second or third, it does not affect your points. So, I mean, there's not a lot of that anymore like there used to be. A guy used to be able to do that pretty consistently, not in Colorado, but several other states too. But those days are kind of getting behind us. But there are still a few of those out there. And it may not be the best hunt in the world, but you can still build you a point and go hunt as well. So
yeah, for deer, you're right. I mean, they're getting few and farther between. There's still a few of them for elk, and specifically, like, if we look at some of those archery hunts that they are converting from over-the-counter to draw now, I mean, the first year they came out with those, almost every one of them was able to be drawn as a second, third choice. Now, they've kind of cut the tags back a little bit, so some of them aren't necessarily available second choice.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you're right. I mean, that's a good point is, man, don't overlook those second choice hunts. And the one thing about second choice hunt, if you draw that and then you end up finding something else, you can surrender that and opt for a refund because they didn't take your points for that anyways.
Yeah.
So you can just opt for that refund. They'll send you a refund back so long as it's, like say you meet that criteria 30 days, before the start of the season. But it's a good way to kind of put a tag. Yeah, it's not the greatest, but you still have that tag in your pocket if all else fails.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, so you just will work the system. I mean, they're there in place, and if you know how they work, try to take advantage of them the best you can, because it's going to take advantage of you anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
So, yeah.
Well, I'll say this: one other change that they had. Speaking of those second choice options, like I've put in for second choice cow hunts a lot over there, and you can get those. Honestly, there's a lot of cow hunts that you can get second choice in Colorado.
Yep.
The one nice thing used to be is that you had a reduced price.
Yep.
They changed the fee on that this year, so you're paying the same for a cow license as you are a bull license. Don't be surprised if you go after those cow hunts. Don't be surprised when they ding you, for that full license bull tag.
Yep, you bet. So that's a big change that the guys need to watch out for. Guys that are just wanting to go try to fill the freezer where it used to be reduced price. It's it's going to be a little more expensive piece of meat.
Yep, that's for sure. Well, I guess that really the only thing that is left, or at least that we need to talk about, that's probably on everybody's radar right now, that realistically has been looking at Colorado or applying for Colorado or hoping to hunt Colorado, is wolves.
Yep.
What in the world are we going to do once wolves hit? And what are you hearing as far as how that's progressing and where they're sitting right now?
Yeah, well, they just finished up with a few of those meetings here in January and February, and it's coming like a freight train. They are going to be starting to introduce them, reintroduce them, however you want to put it, I guess, by the end of this year. U.S. Fish and Wildlife is supposed to start putting wolves into Colorado by December 31st of 2023. I guess we'll just have to wait and see if that actually happens, if they get it done. We all know how government works. Sometimes it can take a lot longer than what they tell you, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen one day or another, and probably sooner than later too. So,
and my biggest gripe about this, I guess the wording, it's not a reintroduction at this point. We can all assume, or we could all agree on that, it's a supplementation.
Yeah.
Because they had wolves there.
Oh, yeah.
So they're supplementing that population to bolster it a little bit more. But what has really come about after watching some of these commission meetings and hearing the plans or the lack thereof, of just how they're going to manage it. They're still going over, like now they're just like a lot of the meetings that they were having the last couple of months, they were just trying to decide of what tools they could use to manage, because, they've got one side of the fence that says, hey, we voted on this ballot initiative to bring wolves back in, but we didn't want you guys to bring them in just so you could shoot them.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, the people that are put in charge of actually managing these wolves and the depredation issues and the impacts that they're going to have on private land citizens, on livestock populations, even in rural areas, they're trying to have a toolkit where they can manage these problems and instances that come up. And the other side is saying, we don't want you to be able to shoot or use lethal force to take one of these wolves out. And they're having a hard time right now trying to talk sense into that side, and kind of letting them know, listen, it's not like corralling a herd of cows. We can't just go round up that pack of wolves and put them in a pen and go through them and examine them and see which one was responsible for eating that cow and which one wasn't.
Yeah,
that's not a thing.
Yep.
No. We actually have to use every available tool they actually have to be able to use every available tool they have. And that's been the worst thing that I've seen, is just the lack of understanding from that side, and the amount of and then I should say the lack of planning they have from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife to actually take control of this, and how they're going to manage it, and where the funding is going to come from to be able to manage this.
Yeah. Oh yeah, basically right now from the last meeting that I watched, they don't have a plan. They're discussing several options, but nobody can agree on anything, and there is not a management plan for these wolves. There's been a lot of numbers brought up. If they get to 200, the state gets to start control them. Colorado Parks and Wildlife. But that's nothing set in stone by any means. So it's hard to say what's going to happen, and it would be nice to have a plan. It makes me think of the 90s up here when they brought them into Wyoming, and we had a plan, or they had a plan, and they didn't really follow it, but at least they did have a plan. And when they got to a certain number, the state got to start managing them and everything. And we still have plenty of them, but we are managing them right now in Wyoming and Idaho. They're having at them right now in Idaho because they've gotten to be such a problem over there. So I would like to see them come up with a plan, because they're going to do well. They got a lot of resources down there. I think they're going to do really, really, really well down there. So
you talk about the population differences between Wyoming and Idaho. Both have very strong populations at the time of that reintroduction. Very strong populations.
Yep.
But it's just amazing to me that there's still such a controversy. And I don't think there's much of a controversy when it comes from CPW or the people surrounding that understand the dynamics of managing wildlife, not to the detriment of other wildlife species, but managing them individually so that both can coexist and not, overreach onto that other species. Like that. They've had both of those states to look at and see the effects that wolves had, especially like in Wyoming around Yellowstone. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Like you can't point to directly to another instance where a dominant predator has had that large of an impact to an ungulate population as what they did to the elk in Yellowstone.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No. It's kind of hard for somebody like me to wrap my head around it. We've seen what they've done, and our elk herd's still good in places, but it's good in all the places that we've been able to manage wolves too. And where they're not managed, it's a mess. It's a wreck right now, and not everybody wants to admit that, but even some of the people that were pretty pro wolf or have come around a little bit. That Lamar Valley country is a perfect example. I used to be one of the most thriving elk herds there was, and man, there's not enough elk left up there to even worry about. They either were killed or they just left. After a while, you get harassed and chased and watch all your buddies get killed. Pretty soon, you're going to leave. So, yeah. So, yep. It's going to happen in places down there. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But it's something that everybody that's interested in hunting in Colorado needs to pay attention to. So.
And I think right now they're scheduled to release, what'd you say, 15 wolves this first year?
Yeah, approximately
by December 31st.
Yep. So that's kind of what they're going to try to do for the next 3 years, is that 15 to 18 wolves for the next 3 years. And they're all wolves. It was kind of interesting to me. I didn't realize this until they brought it up. They're all wolves that are going to come from Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, or Washington. So they're not going to Canada to get those wolves that like we did here in Wyoming. They're going to come from here, and boy, I hope they show up here just north of where I live, and they can have them. So we'll donate some. So.
Yeah, I'll bet. The problem is them, like, now we're transporting trained killers. Like they know exactly what an elk is. They know how to move in on that herd. The problem is they're putting them in on herds that haven't had to deal with wolves in their life.
No.
So,
nope.
And we saw the initial impact in Wyoming and Idaho when they first started thriving and multiplying, and it was like kid in the candy store. Like, they just go in and wipe herds out. Like, they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
There was no defense of them. And so it's going to be a pretty rude awakening. I read through some of that. I read through some of the material they had, and they had a preliminary draft of the map for the release sites on those wolves. And what was the most disturbing about that is that it seemed like it was almost third tier or third fiddle or second fiddle as far as taking into account the population, how that elk herd was doing. More so, they were worried about releasing these wolves and dispersing them in areas that voted according to where they voted more favorably to keep these wolves or to have these wolves. So basically, they're targeting these areas that have a lot of recreational traffic, a lot of, kind of summer or winter skiing type destinations around Crested Butte, Vail, Avon, locations like that for part of the release sites. It didn't seem right to me that that's the way they were trying to target. It wasn't even like they were using biology to figure out where they should be putting that. Yes, they said these areas had large areas of roadless and wilderness type where they wouldn't run into as many interactions with humans. But you and I both know it doesn't matter where they release that. I mean, you said that there was some type of criteria for the release site for surrounding states so that they didn't have to initially inherit that problem.
Yeah, 60 miles. Supposed to be a 60-mile buffer zone of where they release from any neighboring states, which is Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico. So.
Now, how many miles was it from where they released those wolves in Wyoming? Because the wolves that came into northwestern Colorado, they came from Wyoming.
Yep.
I'm going to say that was further than 60 miles.
Yep, it was. So initially, when they released the initial bunch of wolves in the 90s in Wyoming, the numbers that I've seen, those wolves ended up going like 28 to like 120 some miles is where they ended up going before they kind of settled in. And they just took off. Their wolves they're built to travel, and they are really good at it. So you're not going to contain them somewhere. Wherever you drop them off, they're just going to head out till they find a place they like and a food source they like, whether that be elk, deer, or cattle or sheep. And they're gonna go start killing stuff. Because that's what God put them on this earth to do. And they are
that's
good
right.
at it.
Now that's another thing I found, a little offensive in the fact that they came right out and said that they don't want to release them on federal land because they would have to go through too much red tape with the environmental impact studies. So because of that, they're going to have all the release sites on either private or state land, knowing full well that they may spend 10 minutes on that private or state land before they enter the federal land. So it shows you the lengths that they can go to circumvent. I mean, can you imagine if you told Wyoming State, said, you know what, I'm gonna bring some access deer up here, or let's go the other end. Let's say you're gonna bring some, you can get anything you want in Texas, damn near. So let's say you want to bring, I don't know, some Marco Polo sheep, and you want to dump them off on your private land to where you don't have to do anything, but you're okay that, you're not going to fence them in. You're going to let them go wherever they want. Do you think Wyoming or the federal government would be okay with that?
Yeah. No.
I mean, no chance in hell.
No. So I guess the main reason they're getting away with it, as they explained it to me, is that the state of Colorado, the people of Colorado voted for this. I wish they'd have let us have a vote up here in Wyoming when they brought them in. So
that's the big issue here is, I think when it gets down, I think we can all agree when it gets down to managing wolves, you should base that off of more science, data, statistical analysis than feelings and just what your heart says or overall emotion.
You bet.
It just the problem is it seems like the people that voted for these wolves to come in have a distorted opinion of reality, and they vote more off emotion than they do off of science. I mean, real science, not some crazy I want to change or wolves change the rivers type science.
Oh yeah, which they've proven wrong now, but we could go into that for hours.
Sure.
The biggest thing is wolves are awesome. I've seen a lot of them, got to spend time around them. They're a cool animal, and I don't want to see them all killed and extinct by any means, but there's a place for them. And I don't think Colorado's it. I've spent a lot of time in Colorado, and I mean, if nothing else, there's too many people in Colorado.
Yeah.
I mean, even some of the best country in Colorado is having houses built on it now. I mean, the days of wolves being in that kind of country are in the past. So, I mean,
Yep.
A lot of those people, I always look at it, that front range country there. I bet back in the day, that was great country for wolves. You guys want them there? Let's go get rid of all them houses and put them back in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you willing to sacrifice to actually create the type of habitat that is going to be, that's going to be beneficial to wolves?
Yep. Yeah, that's just it. 95% of the people that voted for it will never see one, will never have to deal with them. They won't affect them in any way, but they can get on social media and say they had a part in that and feel good about themselves. So
correct.
As long as they don't have to watch a video of a pack of wolves, dragging down an old cow elk and eating her while she's still alive. Yeah, because that might hurt someone's feelings then.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just I guess my biggest problem. I have nothing against wolves if they're managed.
Yep.
And that's the biggest thing I say is if they're managed, because if we've learned from nothing else is that there's so many loopholes and judges and litigations that can happen out there when it comes to kind of allow states to manage these populations or these predator populations that, in my opinion, can be highly invasive if left unchecked and unmanaged, to the point to where it's costing the state a significant amount of money to deal with depredating issues. And I mean, let's be real. The ungulate population and some of these other populations that are hunted, black bears, I'll put in black bears in there,
Yep.
coyotes, you name it, those mountain lions, those species are managed, some better than others. Some states manage them better than others.
Yeah.
But that's kind of my opinion. But at the same time, what we've learned is that when you get these feel-good animals like grizzly bears and wolves, the biggest problem I have is that they don't want any management of them.
Yeah.
And that's my biggest fear. If they went into those and, like you said, they got so hung up and there was so much litigation on trying to turn the wolf population over to the state to manage, it just there's precedence there where you can look and say this is what they do. They introduce these animals and then they don't allow you to manage them. I mean, we're still waiting for a grizzly bear hunt, and how many grizzly bears do they kill on a regular basis in Wyoming just through game and fish? Just through depredation.
And it costs them money. It
Yeah.
costs the state money, costs all of us money, and when we could be making money off that resource.
Yeah.
And good money off that resource. So, it's the same thing. I've been around grizzlies since I was a kid, and they're awesome. They're probably one of my favorite animals. But you have an apex predator that is not managed and goes unchecked. Man, they're raising havoc in places. So you look at northwestern Wyoming, between the wolves and the grizzlies, all those moose areas are shut down now. There's not any moose left anymore. I mean, where's the bleeding hearts for the moose? So
yeah,
and that's what I can't figure out. So they're just gone. Some of those moose areas I used to guide when I was a lot younger, I mean, they were awesome. The moose hunting was great there. You don't even see a moose in that country anymore. They're gone. So
which is definitely scary coming from, a guy that's seen that population of moose hit that downturn, and there's a direct correlation between those wolf impacts and that low moose population or declining moose population. And now we're introducing that same animal into a state that is about the only state that has had a thriving moose population to the point to where they are actively issuing cow tags. They're issuing more and more bull tags. They're making good money on this. It's an incredible comeback story for the Shiras moose in Colorado.
Yeah.
And, man, I am just scared it's going to be short-lived.
You bet it is. Oh, they are good at killing moose. Moose are not hard to kill for wolves, and boy, they proved that. We watched it happen. We watched the decline and the rapid decline of it. So within a couple years of that reintroduction, you never saw a calf anymore. They were gone. The grizzlies were tough enough on them, but the wolves, that was easy pickings. And the difference between the grizzly and the wolves hunt year round. At least the grizzlies will go hibernate for a while, especially when the game's really vulnerable.
Yeah, it's a tough situation that, like Logan said earlier, it's one that we all need to pay attention to, voice our opinion, stay as active as we can, and when they give us a platform to voice our opinion, take that platform. I know HAL.org does a good job of informing people. If anyone isn't a member of that, I encourage them to be a member, because they are definitely on the forefront of informing people and populations as a whole and hunters as a whole about any type of changes and things like that that are getting ready to take place, and informing them about meetings, where they can voice their opinion.
Yep. Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see, and everybody down there, the ranchers, the outfitters, everybody loves to hunt in Colorado. I wish them the best.
Yep. Well, with that, I'll just say that if anyone has any questions on Colorado, on the application process, on going in greater detail on some of these changes, or maybe even just have questions on units or hunts or things like that, you can always reach us here at Huntin' Fool. You can either become a member. If you are a member, you can call in and talk to us, me, Logan, the rest of the crew. We love talking to our members, helping them out with their applications and directing them to areas that fit just exactly what they're looking for in their hunts.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, if you got some points in Colorado, I would definitely be looking to burn them here before too long. I don't think, especially deer wise, I don't think it's going to get any better for a while. So yeah, look to see what you can draw and go have a good hunt while the hunting's still good.
Yeah. So we'll see y'all next time.